Hello, Nathan here, and welcome to another networking tutorial. We just have a few more tutorials left before this series is finished. I really hope you enjoyed this series, and I hope you learned something on how to get networking to work with your XNA games. And so all we have left to do is to bring in the screen system. And we're going to do that so we can have a menu screen and have the particle system kind of build, and we can have it kind of a full particle system before we get to the play screen. If you remember from the last video, we are using the particle system, and it will start with a black screen, and then we will randomly get a dot. So we just want it to have several dots before we even start the game, and we can do that by having a screen system in the game itself. And that will also give us a chance to have a menu screen so we can click play or quit, and you can enhance that if you want to. But that's all I will cover in this tutorial series. So in the description of the YouTube video and my forums posting, I will give you a zip file that has the screen system DLL in it, just like we did with the particle system. You can download that screen system and put that in the same location as the particle system DLL. So where you have your .cs files, where you have your game.ico, where you have your game thumbnail, and where you have your CS project, you want to put both these DLLs inside of there. Now, once you do that, let's just do the same thing we did with the particle system, and let's right-click references, go to add a reference, and let's click the browse tab, and there it is. So click screensystem.dll and click OK. So now I brought the screen system into the game. Now what we want to do is we want to create a game screen. So let's call it a gameplay screen. But before we do that, let's create a folder. So right click the game, not the solution but the actual game, and let's go to add new folder, and let's call this screens. Game screens. Okay, so that is a game screens folder. Let's right click that folder and go to add new class. And let's just call this like BattleScreen. Alright, so we have a BattleScreen. Let's make this a public class. And now we need to make it a derivative of gameplay screen. So, to make a derivative, after the class name, put a space and then a colon, and then another space, and let's say game screen. Now, once you do that, it'll have a little blue rectangle underneath the letter G, and then let's click this little box down here, and let's add the using the screen system library. Just add that using up top. Now, once you do that, it'll have another box down there. You just do the same thing, and then implement abstract class game screen. So this will give us all the methods and parameters and properties that we need for any game screen to have. We're going to have this screen draw, update, and initialize. So let's go ahead and get rid of these throw new exception errors. So at the very top we have an accepts input property. Let's delete the throw new not implemented exception, and let's set return true, because this will accept input. Okay, draw screen, let's go ahead and delete that line, the throw new not implemented exception, and let's do that for the final 3 methods. Okay, so now we just have blank methods. Now let's save this, and let's go back to the game1.cs. Alright, so now the tedious part is we need to move everything from this game1.cs file to the BattleScreen class. Now, we do not want to copy stuff like Graphics Device Manager and Sprite Batch. So we just want to copy what we made, and we want to leave the particle system and the emitter. So, one thing we will need is this texture 2D bullet texture. So we can cut that by doing a Control and then the X key on the keyboard. That'll cut that. And then let's go to the battle screen, and at the very top after the property, let's just do Control V to paste it. Now it's going to complain about the texture 2D because we need to add using Microsoft.xna.framework.graphics. So be sure those two using statements are added above here. And then we will need to add a few more as we go, but those will be the two important ones. Like this TCP client, we'll need to add another one. Alright, so now in our game1.cs class, we have the Graphics Device Manager, and then the Sprite Batch. So we need to copy everything from TCP client to client, all the way down to int player health, enemy health. So we want to leave the Graphics Device Manager and Sprite Batch, and then we also want to leave the particle system and emitter. So we just cut those lines in between those four. So that just leaves the Graphics Device Manager, Sprite Batch, particle system, and emitter in the game.cs. Just cut everything else. All the fields and properties, that is. And then paste it below the bullet texture. Alright, so now it's going to complain about the TCP client. Just repeat the process. We need to add using system.net.sockets. For the memory stream, we need to add using system.io. That will work for the binary reader and writer as well. Now for the keyboard state, we need to add using Microsoft.xna.framework.input. And that should be everything we need to add for now. So these 4 or 5 lines are what we need to add. So we need to add screen system library, Microsoft.xna.framework.graphics, system.net.sockets, system.io, and Microsoft.xna.framework.input. Then you want to put the using word in front of each one of those. Alright, so now the constructor. It doesn't like the current and previous, so we need to cut that out of this game1.cs constructor and then paste it inside the battle screen, and we need to create a constructor here. So after the int player health, enemy health, semicolon, press enter twice so we have a new line, and let's say public battle screen, opening closing parentheses, opening and closing curly brackets, and then let's just paste it in there. Alright, so inside of the initialize, it's going to complain about everything except the init particle system. So let's cut everything except the init particle system and base.initialize. Let's go back to the battle screen, and let's paste it inside of the initialize screen. Init particle system needs to stay there. Load content. Let's copy everything after the sprite batch is equal to new sprite batch, and before emitter is equal to new emitter. So we're just copying the player.texture, player.rotation, .position, enemy.texture, and bullet texture. Just those lines. Control X to cut it again. Let's go back to the battle screen. And we need to make a new method after the initialize screen. So what we need to do is say public override load content. Pretty much all the important stuff that Game1.cs has, like initialize, load content, draw, update, you'll want to override if it isn't already inside of the skeleton, the abstract skeleton, basically. Now, I set up the screen system to have a dedicated update and draw for every screen. In my previous tutorials, like this space shooter tutorial, you can modify the update and draw. You remember, if you've watched those tutorials, when you create a new screen, like the play screen, you override the draw screen. Then you have a base.draw. I changed that because we really should not modify or do anything on the base.draw method. So, every screen has a update and draw method, but it needs to call the update screen and draw screen. Now, with that being said, this is our first derivative of gameplay screen, of game screen actually. So, we do not need to have base.load content. I know it's a little bit confusing, which is why I removed the base.update and base.draw, because you will always need to have those, unless you knew what you were doing in the previous screen system version, but I removed that to make it less confusing. So anyway, remove the base.load content line, and let's go back to the game1.cs. We already cut what we need to paste. So let's go back to the battle screen and Control-V to paste that. And it's going to complain about a few things here. Math helper, we need to add using Microsoft.XNA framework. Content, it doesn't know what to do with content, so what we need to do, every screen inside of the screen system has a local reference to the master screen system. The one that you use to add, when you add a screen, you call screenSystem.addScreen. Now that method sets the new screen to have a reference of the active screen system that you are using to add the screen, if that makes sense. Basically, you have a local reference to the screen system you should be using. So we need to get the screen system as a copy of the content and graphics device, and the input class, which we will not be using in this series, but it does have a reference to those as well. So we will need to get a local copy of our content, which is right there, that it's complaining about content. So a content object is a object of content, the class content manager, and then we need to add using Microsoft.xna.framework.content. I know this is a lot of stuff to add to a new class, but I'll go over it again at the very end. Make sure you have all the using statements and everything you will possibly need. So we need to have an object of content manager. Let's call this capital C content is equal to screen system dot content. So screen system refers to the local reference of the screen system, and we just get the local reference of content here. Now we make a capital content because if you want to, you can change all these below, but I just think modifying one line is much easier than modifying potentially, three already, here, here, and here. So just replicate what we want this to be right here. Alright, so now we need to get a local copy of graphics device. So again, graphics device, capital graphics, capital G graphics, and capital D device is equal to screen system dot graphics device. So graphics device, capital G and capital D is equal to screensystem.graphicsDevice. Alright, let's put an enter after that line so we have a line in between the two objects here. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to go back to gamemode.cs and copy everything after the emitter and screen or particle system lines. So everything after the system.emitter is equal to emitter. Cut those lines. Paste it after bullet texture is equal to content.load. Alright. There is that method. Let's do a little bit of cleanup. Okay, so that's the load content method. Unload content has nothing. Update. The first two lines where it says previous is equal to current and current is equal to keyboard.getState. Cut those two lines. And let's go back to the battle screen and paste those two inside the update screen method. Now, the load content is complaining about stream received. We have not copied that over, so ignore that for now. Okay, so now we have an if condition that says allows the game to exit. Let's leave this if condition and this.exit. Let's leave those two lines. And then everything after the to do add your update logic here. Let's cut everything inside of there. All the way down until system.update. So cut everything after the comment that says to do add your update logic here and before system.update. Now all that should be left in the gamer.cs update method is the if condition to exit the game, system.update, and base.update. Those should stay in the gamer.cs. Now, let's go back to the BattleScreen.cs and paste those cut lines inside the update screen method. Now, it's going to complain about a few things like send data and get data from memory stream. Those are methods we created in here. We just haven't copied those over yet. So just ignore those for now. Alright, so let's go back to the gamer.cs class and let's copy, I think, all those methods. Alright, so what I'm going to do to make it a little bit easier, we see the private void stream received iasync result AR. You see that line, and to the left of that line you see this little minus in a little box. So click that, and then do the same thing for the process data line, and do the same thing for the get data from memory stream line, and do the same thing for the send data line. Now, what that did was it collapsed the method itself. It kept the method header, but it collapsed everything in between the opening and closing curly brackets. So that gives us a chance to just cut it like it is right now. And when we go back to the BattleScreen class, it'll allow us to paste it, and it will be complete. So what we need to do is we need to paste it after the update screen. So we have 3 ending curly brackets. After the third ending curly brackets, press enter twice, and then paste. Alright. Now it's going to complain about message box. Now this is where we need to add another using statement. So we need to add using system.windows.forms. And don't worry about if you're missing something. I will go over that at the very end, because that's a lot of using statements to add. Okay, so now in the draw class, and back in the gamemode.cs, in the draw class, we draw the particle system, and then we draw everything else. So let's go ahead and delete, not cut, but delete the lines that say sprite batch.begin and spritebatch.end. Alright, now cut everything after system.draw and before base.draw, which makes the draw method inside of game.cs only contain graphicsdevice.clear, system.draw, and base.draw. Those should be the only 3 lines remaining. We cut everything else and we deleted the spritebatch.begin and spritebatch.end. Now, if you go back to the BattleScreen class and we go to the draw screen method, let's paste everything below. Now, it's going to complain about spritebatch. Alright, so let's go back to the very top of the method and put 2 lines above that. Now, we need to get a local copy of the spritebatch, which the screen system has a copy of. So, just like we did with the graphics device and the content manager, let's call spritebatch. Let's name it the same thing that's named here. So, lowercase s, capital B, sprite batch is equal to screen system dot sprite batch. Alright, so that gives us a local copy of spritebatch. Now, spritebatch.begin and spritebatch.end are automatically called, so you do not need to call that. Game1.cs, everything should be complete. So, let's save everything and let's run the game, or build it. Alright, so we have a few issues here. We need to get the graphicsdevice.viewport from the BattleScreen's update screen. So, just like we did before, we need to get a local copy of the graphics device. So, graphics device is equal to screen system dot graphics device. Alright, now let's try another build. And it succeeded. Okay. So, before we continue, let me walk through all the using statements you should add. If you already have all the required using statements, just ignore me. Alright, so going from the top to the bottom, you don't need to do these in any order, but I'm just going from the top to bottom on the screen here. You need to have using screen system library, using Microsoft.xna.framework.graphics, using system.net.sockets, using system.io, using Microsoft.xna.framework.input, using Microsoft.xna.framework, using Microsoft.xna.framework.content, using system.windows.forms. Okay, so let's go ahead and press F5 and run our game, and alright, everything's good. So that was pretty much it for this tutorial. It's pretty lengthy tutorial, a lot of stuff to do, change, a lot of stuff to add, so I'm going to cut this out here. Next tutorial, we will go ahead and actually load up our BattleScreen class, load that into the screen system, and actually use the screen system. Okay, so once we do that, we'll have a couple more tutorials left. We'll need to bring in the menu screen, and then we'll need to actually create a menu entry class. And then we will need to do a few more changes, a few more bug fixes that I want to discuss in videos. And then that should be it for the series. So probably 3 or 4 more tutorials left before it's done. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I know we didn't get a lot of visual stuff done, like the actual gameplay. It was just behind the scenes in the code. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was not that complex. Just copy everything over, and a few things you want to leave, like the graphics device manager, sprite batch, particle system, and emitter, and anything related to those, they should just stay in the game1.cs. Everything else should be in the new BattleScreen class. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Next tutorial, we will use the screen system and load the BattleScreen class. So I hope to see you next time.